everyone, and welcome to the new episode of Entrepreneurship Lab. This is your host, Nevina Bajalac, welcoming you once again to the podcast where we help you grow and scale your business. And today we have an expert with us coming away all the way from US, and his name is Jim Bramlett. And Jim is a seasoned entrepreneur. He's a business strategist and executive coach with over 40 years of experience. And today we're going to talk about optimizing your processes, procedures, your leadership, and specifically talk about optimizing if you are in the product business. Jim is author of two books, Stop the Hustle and Unconventional Thinking of Dominant Companies. Jim, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here.
Davina, thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to share what some of the lessons I've learned.
Yes, you have huge experience, so I don't even know where to start. But let's say, how did you get into entrepreneurship? Did you start it when you were very young, or you moved from corporate world? I know you're passionate about coaching and helping others, but how things started for you a while back?
Sure, and a lot of it has to do with my story. So over my career, I've started seven companies. Four of them for myself, three for other companies. And I started my very first one was when I was a senior in college, and and uh, and then I started one about 5 years later, and both of those were failures. And I learned some very valuable lessons about starting my. And I tell people this, and I write this in my book. Um, I encourage you not to start a business because of a passion you have. I believe you start a business to fulfill a need of the buyer, and it's exactly what I did wrong. My first business was a restaurant, and I didn't really have a strategy. My second business, because I spent 40 years in the trucking and transportation business, I started a trucking company just because I thought I knew trucking. There wasn't anything about, well, I see a need that's not being filled, so I want to start a company to fulfill that need. And that's a lot about what I preach now, and is, well, what are those needs that buyers have? And so I've had failures, I've had successes, and I wrote my two books to help other entrepreneurs understand what it is we buyers, I mean, you and I are both buyers. We buy something every day. Now, we may not be professional, we don't do it for a living, but we make buying decisions every day. And I believe the better that the entrepreneur understands what triggers a purchase, the better they can match up what their offering is to that buyer. And I'm happy to share very quickly what that formula is if you'd like.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just have to for a second agree with you because I learn also consulting and coaching as well. And from my experience, is that a lot of clients, a lot of people, even me, like we start something as a passion, which is nice, of course, is to do something you're passionate, but it has to be supported with the need, or you're kind of filling a gap that, or doing something that many people are doing because a lot of markets are saturated, like restaurant, but you're doing it better, you're doing it a little bit different, or you're targeting specific audience, not just going out there without strategy, without plan, because this is where so many of us fail and then we learn the hard way. So I'm hoping for everyone listening is to take notes and learn from us, hopefully, and first go and really see where is the need or how will this be different or better so we can attract those people. Yeah, so I'm very excited to hear about some strategies and some things that from your experience are working for all entrepreneurs out there.
Sure. Okay. I when I talk to entrepreneurs who started a company, they use an expression. We're solving a problem, or we're fulfilling an unmet need. And so I want to talk to the audience about that problem. What is that? And what is that need? Okay. And I'll go back into my first book. That first book was all about. I was amazed at Amazon Netflix, and Uber, and how they just absolutely dominated their market space. My second book, Stop the Hassle, takes this formula that I believe they used and how every company can apply it. So here it is. I believe that we buyers, we have four main criteria. In other words, these are the problems centered around, and these are the needs we have. Number one is convenience. When we have an option, when we have a need, we're going to opt for the offering, the product that offers more convenience. And that means I'm looking to save time. I'm looking to save effort. I want my life simpler. I want my life easier. So if you just think about technology, any new technology, it's going to probably be around, hey, this technology is going to save you time. It's going to save you effort. It might make your life easier. So we're always looking for saving time and making our lives easier. So convenience is very important. So if you're an entrepreneur looking for an opportunity, find a business or an industry that you don't feel is very convenient, and you can figure out a way to save them time, effort, make their lives simpler, easier. That's number one. Number two, as buyers, we're all, looking to save money, but I don't believe you have to be the lowest price, but you have to be competitive. And more importantly, I think transparent pricing is important. There are industries, and like the airlines, we don't like the surprises, the fine print. Oh, we didn't tell you about that change fee. We don't like necessarily working with attorneys. We know they're charging us so much per hour, but we never know how many hours. We like that certainty before we commit to buying something. I want to know, and I joke about this, but I say we wouldn't hire somebody to paint our house if they said, oh, we're going to charge 50 euros or $50 an hour. We'd go, well, how many hours? And they go, well, we will let you know. No, I need to know before I spend my money. I want to know. So convenience, pricing, competitiveness, and transparency. And number three is user experience. We want to be treated as a buyer like we're their only customer, even though we know they've got hundreds, thousands, millions of customers, but we want to be treated very specially. And of course, it depends on the industry, but a lot of times we buyers want to ask questions about the product, the offering. And even though AI is very popular, we get frustrated with talking to bots. We don't like the phone trees. Oh, press one, press three, then that takes too much time and effort, and it's not a great experience. We as buyers, when we're about ready to buy, we have in our own mind a perception of what it is we should be getting in return for exchanging capital. And it's especially true if there's a brand promise on the other end. But we expect to be fulfilled with what. So I use this example. If we're driving through McDonald's, we aren't expecting a gourmet meal, but what we are expecting is the food to be warm, the buns to be fresh, and by the way, the combination meal, I want to make sure the fries are. I don't want to pull off and say, wait a minute, what happened to that? So that all has to do with experience. We want to feel good. If we're dealing with a service type company, we want professionalism. If somebody's coming into my home, I really would prefer to have them uniformed and, trimmed. And it's just that kind of user experience that we expect. And then number four is trust. And this especially applies to startups and early stage companies. A lot of buyers have not purchased from you. So how do they trust you? Well, they trust you because you offer guarantees, warranties, easy returns if it's merchandise. We want testimonials. We prefer to hear how our peers had that. And then we want, references. We want to know, how long have you been in business? Have you won awards? Are you a specialist so that I can garner up that, you really know that part. So those are the four: convenience, price, competitive, transparency, a great user experience, and trust. And when you can do all four of those, me as a buyer, I don't have excuses not to buy from you. But what happens is most companies have some sort of trade-off. And here in the US, I talk about Walmart. It's very low prices, but now you have to check yourself out. The stores may not be as well lit as another option or clean. I talk about we have Jiffy Lube here, which changes your oil in 15 or 20 minutes. No appointment necessary, very quick. They're selling convenience, but in exchange, it's going to be higher price than other options. So I encourage entrepreneurs to evaluate the market, what's out there, what isn't convenient enough, what's too high priced, what is not providing a great user experience to the buyer, and what is it that can be embellished from a trust standpoint so that the buyer it has fully agreed, yeah, I can buy this and trust that it's going to work and trust that it's going to deliver what they've advertised and what I believe in my heart, I should get. And when you can do all four, and you can't always do all four, but do as many of those as you absolutely positively can. So that's what my second book is all about, meeting that psychology of the buyer. And those are the four categories every buyer is looking for.
I love it. And I mean, you're so on the point, and these tips are so helpful and simplified. It's years of experience and understanding, and you simplify it in 5 minutes. So I'm sure if you're listening, you're already getting so much value, and go check Jim's books and grab a copy for sure. And I agree, I am also obsessed. I love studying different companies. I love Amazon, their culture, very different way of thinking from Jeff that came comparing to many other companies. But what I love the most about them is really that convenience and putting customer first. And some things they're doing are unbelievable. So, like you said, they are trying not to compromising in any of those levels. But I think also if you're starting, there is a market for everything, right? But you have to be clear, like those supermarket chains. Are you more like expensive, but you're providing exquisite service, amazing display, or you're attracting like Walmart, like those cheaper ones, but people cannot expect, someone to actually come and serve them. They're doing everything themselves. So everyone, there is a market for everyone. I believe in that. And I think it's important for entrepreneurs to just understand and decide who is our customers and where we're going to be and what will be our brand, so they can start from there. I'm
Yeah.
curious to know, Jim, you have so much experience. If you can go back in time and there is one thing that you wish someone told you that could maybe save you money or time, I love to ask this question. What it would be? Like, what would be one thing that if you can go back, you wish you knew earlier, or someone guide you so you don't make some huge mistakes or losses that you had?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I get this question from people. So what's the one piece of advice you would give? And it's advice I did not get. And that is pretty much everything you're going to attempt to do as an entrepreneur is going to take you far longer than you think. It's going to be far harder than you think. There are going to be bumps in the road. And when I started out, I write a business plan. I have this goal. Here's where we're going, and here's how long it's going to take. But you don't know all the things that are going to happen. And I say that because if you expect them to happen, you can deal with it much easier than, oh my gosh, no, what? And two great examples is, nobody expected the pandemic. And so I guarantee you that put a bump in the road for everybody. You no longer could have meetings. You had to get on Zoom, and many businesses had to pivot. Restaurants had to pivot, right, to survive. And so I don't care what you're doing. My whole journey, it's always taken longer, always been harder. But if I had known that up front, I wouldn't have maybe been, in such despair at times because, well, wait a
Yeah.
minute, I was expecting, this bump,
And
and so,
I feel also in these times where there's so many people on social media that are kind of showing their success, which is not always necessarily true, but is a fake story, like of traveling and making money online and just to attract the audience and people saying, wow, they made millions before they're 30 and they make everything look so easy. And I feel in these times, that's why a lot of people coming, they're frustrated in first year. I mean, in first year, you're happy if you make $1,000. You know what I mean? Like people have such a huge expectation. There is maybe 0.5% of entrepreneurs that do something so big in the first or second year. And I always say, I guarantee that's not their first venture or not their first business. They were building something and we followed and we think, oh wow, in 1 year they build this company or millions of dollars. But it's a longer journey, and I feel like especially these days with social media, and then we feel like you said in despair, we feel like we're not going fast enough. I had this feeling before as well, and realize, hey, it's a journey, and then all of a sudden it's going to start multiplying, but it might take 5 years, 7 years of you hustling and making mistakes and building slowly to get to some point. So I love that advice, and thank you for being very real, because this is what we miss these days, really.
I had a mentor early on tell me, and I've remembered it to this day, that before you can succeed, you must fail, because otherwise you don't really understand and appreciate that success. And like I said, I have failed. I think if you if you peel back the onion on some of the most successful entrepreneurs and companies, there will be failure somewhere along the road. But as long as you learn from that, and the same thing I think applies to leadership. Um, I don't think colleges and universities do a very good job at teaching leadership. They teach technical skills, engineering and accounting, but they don't do a very good job. And so, again, I believe if you're an entrepreneur, connect yourself to mentors, connect yourself to peers, you know, getting other perspectives and stories, like you said, I mean, that will be a tremendous help. I lead two peer groups of leaders, and what they share amongst each other is very valuable, and it's very lonely at the top, and that is not a
Yes.
hypothetical. That is true. It's very lonely at the top, and so I encourage any entrepreneur or leader, find a group, find a posse, find others that you can lean on, because it's going to be lonely, and other perspectives are going to be so important as you make all these decisions that you face on this journey.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. So, I want to ask you this following question. What are some of the most common mistakes you coach so many people that you see people are doing, or maybe that guide them in the wrong direction away from the goals they want to achieve? What is it something with a mindset, or not having the strategy, or not taking action? What is something that you, with so many years of experience, see is kind of stopping people?
Yeah, I think one of the most important things that many companies miss is having a formal strategic plan that is managed by somebody other than the owner or CEO. And um, I think too many companies don't realize the significance of a strategic plan. And here's what the significance is: you got to get all of the people in your organization rowing in the same direction, having the same priorities, having the same purpose. And when you write that down and say, here's our top three initiatives, here's number one, here's number two, number three, here's who has to be involved in number one, here's the resources we're going to need, and here's our target date for getting that done. And then when we all join in and accomplish that, Now we're going to go attack number two and add another one to the list. But I think getting alignment with your team and the company going in the same direction is absolutely critical. That's number one.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And I love how you put it because so many, I feel, especially startups and medium size, they're not sure, they're not strategizing, they're just growing and no system to support. And what I learned is that we think at the beginning it's hard because we don't have clients, but once companies start scaling and they don't have systems in place, it's absolute mess because now they cannot deliver the promise they have. They cannot deliver the quality. They start clients start complaining. So growing is so much more headache than actually starting and getting to a certain point. From my experience working with also a lot of companies and seeing them grow rapidly. So, Jim, thank you for that. As we are wrapping up, I want to ask you a final advice, maybe something very important that we haven't mentioned that you think all the listeners, can learn from. And before that, you can share where people can get your books and learn more from you as well.
Sure, great. Yeah, when you, as an entrepreneur, especially as a startup entrepreneur, you you're doing everything, right? You maybe you don't have the wherewithal, the resources to hire all the right people, so you become involved in everything. And there's two curves for an entrepreneur to think about. One is flexibility, and one is control. And in the early days of any organization, it's all about flexibility. You got to get traction, you got to get revenue, and you may have to pivot a little bit. You might hit that bump in the road, but you've got to prove that what I'm offering is of value to the buyer, and I got to get traction. So you don't pay much attention to controls. But as you grow, it now becomes important to start putting in controls, policies and procedures and counting and HR policies. And then it becomes time, well, I need to hire somebody to help me with those controls. And this is, I tell my the peer groups I lead, you're in the get it right business when it comes to hiring people. You you really have to get that right, and especially in an early stage company, um, you've got to learn all the interview tricks. You've got to make sure the references. You got to make sure they can thrive in a small organ. If they came from a very large organization and you're asking them now to come into a small organization where you have to do lots of different things and don't have resources, that can be a shock to some people. So making that transition from where the founder is doing everything, putting controls in, bringing in people, yeah, you really have to do that right. And maybe that's where you need mentors to help.
Yeah, it's absolutely true. Thank you, Jim. So thank you for being here today. Tell us just where we can get your books, everyone listening, if they want to connect with you and
Sure.
read and learn more from you.
But you can get either book. The first book was talking about Amazon, Netflix, Uber. The second book, Stop the Hassle, is a better book for anybody wanting to grow. It's got my formula, some cultural features in there. Stop the Hassle. You can get it on Amazon, or you can get both books at jimbramlett.com. That's JIMBRAMLETT.com. And then sign up for my newsletter. I'm putting out weekly tips and videos on how to grow organically.
I love that. So everyone make sure to take action and go and sign up and get some more value. Thank you, Jim, for being here today. This is absolutely amazing.
Thank you, David, for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you everyone for listening. As always, make sure to give us some hearts, likes, support, subscribe if you haven't already, download the episode, and like I always say, share with at least one person that's going to benefit from this content as well. Thank you for being here,
Awesome.
and I see you in the next episode.